Good morning everyone, welcome to the very first live stream for our members only. This is a bit nerve-wracking, I must admit. I haven't done this before, so we'll see how it goes, and of course I haven't been very well, so let's see how long my voice lasts. Now, I haven't received any questions from you, so I thought that I would start by going through a list of questions that I get asked often on the website, on the YouTube channel. So I thought I'd start there. Now, it would be really great if you would let me know in the chat where you're from and where you're joining from, and if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, so the first question that I get asked all the time is where I can find the supplies. Now, if you've been watching the videos for a while, you will know that I always leave a link in the description box for a blog post, and that contains links to everything that you need to make all of the projects, and it also contains step-by-step instructions. And I like to do that because sometimes, you know, people have different learning styles, and for me personally, I love to watch, but I also like to follow along with step-by-step instructions. And sometimes when I'm in a rush, I don't want to watch a video, I just want to go to someone's website and go, oh, that's how they did that. So that is why I also leave step-by-step instructions in the blog post. So that is the first question, and the most common question I get asked. Okay, so the second question, most common question I get asked is where are you located, and do you have a physical store? So no, we don't have a physical store. This store is, as you see around me, is my store, and we're located in Wellington, actually Lower Hutt, which is just about 10-15 minutes drive from Wellington City in New Zealand. And we have lived here for, oh gosh, 10 years actually now in this city. Before that we lived in Wellington City, and then before that we lived in Canada for a couple of years, so we've been everywhere. Okay, so that is the second most common question. And yeah, our store is literally located in a bedroom in our house. It's a tiny bedroom, and it is filled with probably about 13,000 jars full of beads. And the other question I get asked quite often is how do I keep track of those? And I thought I might do a video all about how to do that, how I do that, and how I store my beads as well, because that seems to be quite a common question. And I know before I had the store and when I was just jewellery making, for me that was it was a burning question, like how do you store all these beads that you get? You get them in little plastic bags, and do you store them in plastic bags, and how do you keep track of them, all of that stuff. So I might do a video later on about that. Okay, so the third question, most commonly asked question that I get is, you make it look so easy, is it really that easy? And the answer is yes. I'm sure that if you've joined the membership only group, you know you've already made some jewellery yourself. And yes, jewellery making can be hard, but I aim my videos at an audience of beginners or people who just want to learn more. I try to keep things simple, and I have this, I guess, talent for being able to see something and break it down into parts. And so I like to share that with you, because often things look much harder than they are. For example, I had lots of questions about the blue necklace that I made with the teardrops that it looked really complex, but actually it was quite easy to make. So yeah, I try to break it down into smaller pieces, bite-sized pieces, so that you can understand better. Hi Jan. Jan's just left a comment. Yes, I am feeling better. I'm still a bit throaty, still a bit kind of windy, you know, not having like I was making the bed this morning and I got out of breath, so yeah, it's definitely feeling better. But it honestly, it was just a nasty cold that wrote me off for a couple of weeks. You know, I haven't been that sick for a while, so it was, yeah, not great. But I'm all better now, on the mend. It's still a little bit of a sore throat, and I actually filmed yesterday, and I got to, when you see the video, it was actually a Barbie video. So I did some Barbie inspired jewellery. Here's one of my little pieces that I made for my Barbie inspired jewellery. And so by the time I got to the end of the video, I was having trouble. I kept having to, when I edited it, I had to cut out all these coughs, and you'll notice, because you know, that my voice was getting quite sore, you know, my throat was getting quite sore, so I was like, ugh. But no, I am definitely feeling better, so thank you for asking. Okay, so the next question, this is one of the most common, is do you have a tutorial for the jewellery that I'm wearing in the video? And I always wear jewellery in the video that I have made a tutorial for. Usually. I did make an exception actually yesterday. I was wearing this piece. Hopefully, I'll just hang on a sec. So I was wearing this piece, which is just a really basic necklace that I made. It's around the wrong way. There we go. And all that is some 10mm artificial pearls and some, what are those? Those are 4mm vacuum beads between. Why won't it focus? There we go. And it had this Murano pendant. And I made that just because I needed something to wear that fitted the Barbie kind of theme, so something pink, to wear while I made the Barbie video. Yeah, so that one, it doesn't really fit my style, but I thought I'd make it anyway. So yes, most of the time the links to what I'm wearing are in the description box. Okay. And I've already covered this, but the other question, another question I get often asked is, do you have written instructions for this? And yes, I do, always in the blog post. One question that I get asked really often is, how do you get your loops to look so good? Now, I actually had this question this morning. One of my viewers said to me, I've been trying for 4 days to make 2 loops that are the same. And as you know, if you've watched the Perfect Loop video, you'll know that it takes practice. And I've been doing this for years, and yes, sometimes my loops aren't perfect. Most of the time they're pretty good, but there's no such thing as perfection, right? It's excellence we are striving for, not perfection. And so my best advice is just practice, practice, practice. You know, practice while you're watching TV. Yeah, I can't wave my magic wand and say this is how you make the perfect loop. All I can do is give you the best advice that I've given you in that video and say just keep working at it. And it's interesting because I was watching a couple of weeks ago, just before I got sick, I was watching a whole lot of videos on how to make the perfect wire wrapped loop, because I'm going to do the perfect wire wrapped loop video, just like I did the perfect loop one. And it was really interesting watching all the different techniques and how different people do them. Now, if my technique doesn't work for you, feel free to go find somebody else's technique that does work for you. Just because I said it doesn't mean it's, you know, gospel. It's just a matter of trial and trial and trial until you get it right. And I'm sorry, I just have to have a drink. For those of you, is there anyone here in New Zealand? I found this bottle at the supermarket. Now, it looks like a plastic bottle, but it's not. It's actually made from plant-based material, and it is reusable and doesn't have all of the nasties in it. So it's actually a really nice bottle to drink out of. Just FYI. Okay. I also often get asked, what is the name of the tool that you use to make the loops? And of course it's the one-step looper, and I would not be without mine. You know that. It's interesting, when I don't use it, I get comments saying, why aren't you using your one-step looper? And sometimes I don't use it for several reasons. The loops that the one-step looper makes are sometimes not perfectly round, and if I want a perfectly round loop, then I will sometimes revert to doing it manually. And sometimes it's just easier to do it manually. And the other thing I find is when you're making a loop and it's really close to a little glass bead, sometimes the one-step looper will kind of come in. You've got to be really careful not to get too close to those beads and kind of shave that a little bit of, sometimes it can come around, the jaws can come around and shave a little bit of the glass off, and you don't want that. So often when I'm making loops with those little tiny beads, I will actually make them manually rather than using my one-step looper. I thought this was a funny question about making loops. You know, if you've watched the Perfect Loop video, or if you've watched any of my videos where I make loops, actually, I always place my thumbnail on the top of the bead and I bend the wire over my thumbnail. And I thought this was a really funny question. It was, my fingernails are weak. Do I need to bend the wire over my thumbnail? No, you don't. You can absolutely just bend it from the beads. I just find if I stick my thumbnail in there, I get a better, nice sharp bend. Okay, we have another question. Just a sec. Just checking the chat, making sure that everything is, you know. Okay, where's my questions gone? All right. Another question that I get quite often is, why do I need special cutters for memory wire? So memory wire is made from stainless steel, and it's incredible. Stainless steel is incredibly hard, and you would use different cutters if you were using stainless steel wire as well. Just checking the chat, just a sec. Okay, so yes, you would need to use different cutters if you were using stainless steel wire as well. I have one customer who uses nothing but stainless steel wire. Personally, my hands are not strong enough to bend stainless steel wire into a loop, so I use the half hard wire, and that works really well for me. So yeah, for memory wire, you definitely need to use your memory wire cutters, or you can use a pair of old cutters that you don't mind getting the blades, the memory wire will damage the blades. Okay, hello Jane. Jane's here from the UK, and she's saying that, yes, I am feeling better, and that the Barbie jewellery will be really pretty. And yes, I actually really loved making the Barbie video. While I was sick, I was thinking about it, and you know how things churn away in your head, and I was envisaging all the beads that I had in my in this room, thinking, what could I make that would totally be Barbie-esque. And so these big bubblegum beads, they did come to mind. It was really interesting though, because I had to do a whole lot of research. So I had to look at Barbie. And I admit I haven't seen the movie yet because I've been sick, and I will go and see it. But I looked at the trailers, and I looked at a whole lot of pictures online, and I actually thought a lot about Barbie when I was growing up, because I didn't have a Barbie. And I say this in the video, but my mum, she refused to get into the hype of the Barbie, and she bought me a Babs doll from the supermarket, which was $1.99 instead of the $29.99 or $95 that the Barbie was. And so I was always so devastated that I never owned a Barbie. But I used to love to make clothes for my dolls. I have been into fashion since I was like 3 years old, and I do a lot of sewing for myself as well. And one of my earliest memories is when I was about 3, saying to my mum, who was using the sewing machine, can you hurry up because I want to sew this theme. And so, yeah, I've been sewing forever. And when I was young, probably in my kind of 8 to 12 age group, they call that tweens now, kind of, I would make lots and lots of clothes for my my Babs doll, and I had another doll called Brit, who was a little short version of Barbie and didn't have the voluminous chest, so I would spend a lot of time making clothes for those. Okay, back to the questions. Okay, what type of wire do I use? So I use German style half hard wire almost exclusively, and I almost exclusively use 20 or 22 gauge wire. I find that if I go to 18, it's quite challenging to bend for me. But I do use it for certain projects. So for example, I used it for making rings because it's hard enough to hold its shape when there's pressure on it. So for example, around your finger. I sometimes use 26 gauge wire for a project that requires something to be really fine, and I would always wire wrap a 26 gauge wire loop because they're just not strong enough. If you make a loop and if you make 2 loops and you put them together, so open them and stick them together, then you can, if you can pull them apart, then it's not strong enough. Okay, yeah, so those wires are the ones that I use most. Another question is just relating to wire is how do I know when to use tiger tail, silk thread or fireline? So tiger tail is a really strong thread. Just grab some out of my drawer. No, it's not in my drawer. I've got some on my desk from my endeavours yesterday. So tiger tail is, you've all seen it. It's not going to focus, is it? There we go. So it's made from 29 strands of wire and it's coated in nylon. So there's a couple of reasons why you should use tiger tail. And you use it almost exclusively for stringing. You wouldn't, it's very bendy, so you couldn't make loops out of it or anything like that. So it's very smooth. So when you wear it, if it does touch your skin, it actually doesn't irritate your skin mostly. It's also really easy to thread beads onto because it's so smooth. It's strong enough that you don't need a needle to use it. And it's also strong enough that it won't break. Well, it would be very rare. I've never ever had a piece of tiger tail break. I don't know I can't think of any circumstance that would break. So yeah, so you use tiger tail for stringing a necklace or a bracelet. Or an anklet. Fireline is used for bead weaving. Now, I didn't have an example of fireline here, do I? You get to see my messy drawer. And I can't find it. It was here just the other day. There we go. So this is fireline. It's I've got one sitting over at my desk. So it is a very fine thread and it is used for bead weaving. So bead weaving is when you use a needle and thread and you create things for kind of how do I describe bead weaving? You generally use seed beads to bead weave, so tiny beads that are woven closely together. Now I did use this one as a tutorial coming up. I did use fireline to make this, and you can see it on the back there. So this is a brooch that I'm making that I have been making for a while. Well, it's been sitting on my desk for a while. I made it ages ago, and the reason I haven't done the tutorial is because I didn't have anything to put on the back. So I was actually thinking this morning, I think those things came in, so I should really do that. Silk thread. So silk thread is used almost exclusively with pearls, and the reason for that, to be honest, I'm not actually 100% sure, but I think it's to do with the fact that it doesn't damage the pearls because it's so, it's really strong, so therefore it doesn't break. And I actually had a question yesterday or a comment about knotting between pearls. And someone said, because when I made my pearl bracelet, I didn't knot between my pearls, I just added a little bead, and someone said thank you for not doing that because all the tutorials she'd seen had knots, and the reason you knot between pearls is so that if it breaks, your pearls don't go everywhere, because pearls being expensive, you do not want to lose them. But so silk thread is really, really tough, but it isn't as tough as something like tiger tail, but it's also very fluid, so it's very soft, and when you use it, it makes your piece really move really beautifully. So the tiger tail, for example, is, you can see it's a little bit more strong and wiry as opposed to the silk thread, which I don't have a piece to show you. Okay, the next question I had was, when would you use French wire? So you would use French wire. If you didn't see that video, I used French wire on my pearl bracelet to go up and through the jump ring. So basically it protects the thread, the silk thread, from the rubbing against the jump ring. And that's the main purpose of a piece of French wire, is protection. Excuse me just a sec. So protection from any metal that comes into contact with the silk thread. Now, having said that, I have actually been working on a project where I have used French wire with tiger tail, just simply because I liked the look of it. It's actually, not sure if you'll be able to see it. This is a piece I'm working on, and can you see if it'll focus? There we go. Can you see there, I've actually used French wire on the tiger tail to go up through the loops of the clasp. And the reason I did that was purely aesthetic. I just really liked the way it looked as opposed to using a wire guardian. So you wouldn't use a wire guardian with a piece of silk thread because they can be quite, the edges can be quite sharp, and it could degrade the thread over time. So that's why you use French wire. How do you know what size wire guardian to use with a 49 strand wire, was a question I was asked just recently, and I couldn't really answer this question, and I would really like to know whether you have an answer for it. I have just in the past chosen a wire guardian that my wire fits through, and that works with the size jump rings that I'm using, and also with the size beads that I'm using. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any idea? Have you used wire guardians in different sizes for different projects? Let me know if you want to throw something in the chat. That would be great. And let me know if you're watching this after the live stream is finished. It would be really cool if you would comment too, and just let me know what your thoughts are on that one. Oh, this one I get asked all the time is, are you afraid that your thread will slip out of your crimp bead? Oh, okay, so I just got asked about the question that I just asked. So the specific question was, how do you know what size wire guardian to use with a 49 strand thread? So so basically she's asking, what size wire guardian do you change the size of your wire guardian depending on your thread, the thread that you're using? So it would be really great if you would answer that one for me, because I do not know the answer. Oh, okay. So the next question was, am I afraid that the wire or my thread will slip out of a crimp bead? I've never had this happen. Well, I have had, on occasion, had a crimp bead fail where I've folded it in half. So using my Xuron pliers, if I can get them off their hook here, using these pliers. Now these are the ones that the divot in the back, it basically makes your crimp bead look like this, and then the divot in the front bit, can you see that? Is it? Yep, there we go. The divot in the front bit, it takes your crimp bead and folds it in half. So on occasion I have had a crimp bead fail when I have used those pliers, and I think the reason they fail is sometimes when you squash them, if you squash them too hard and then you fold them, it weakens that little bit of metal where the fold is. So you've got to judge the amount of pressure that you use to squeeze the crimp bead versus if you're folding it up, versus being strong enough for those to hold the wire. And to be honest, I find that Xuron plier actually quite challenging to use. I know people swear by them, but for me personally, that's why I love my magical crimp beads, my magical crimping plier so much, because it is really, really easy to use. So in terms of wire coming out of the crimp bead or thread, I've never had that happen. Occasionally when I've put a crimp bead on and I haven't squeezed it hard enough, and I have had this happen with my magical crimp pliers, I haven't squeezed it hard enough and I've turned it and squeezed it again, and I've pulled it and it has come undone. But basically all you need to do is pull it back up and give it another squeeze, and that's simply because I haven't squeezed it hard enough with my magical crimping pliers. In case you didn't know this, I have quite weak wrists, and so therefore I struggle sometimes with those things that require a lot of strength. For example, making loops in my memory wire. You'll notice if you've watched my memory wire bracelet tutorials, you'll notice that I sometimes have to turn and turn and turn and turn, and that's because my wrists aren't very strong. So yeah, I've never had a crimp bead fail in that way, as in the thread coming out, when I've been wearing a piece. Yeah, and I have in the past trimmed my wire right close to the crimp bead as well. You know, sometimes personally I like to put it down through a couple of the beads, but even if you don't do that and you chop it really, really close to the crimp bead, I've never had it come out. Hello Catherine, thank you. Yes, I'm happy, I'm feeling better too. Okay, okay, the next question is, do you need special crimp beads for your magical crimping plier? And you need a specific size for your magical crimping plier. Now I have tried other sizes with my magical crimping plier, which I have here. Come on, focus. There we go. Okay, so as you know, this is my favourite tool on the planet. Really, this I'm sorry, but this tops my one-step looper. Mainly because I struggled so much with the Xuron pliers, and when I got my magical crimping plier, it was like, oh, heaven. So in the past I have tried to use smaller crimp beads with it, and that does not work. I have never had on hand another 2x2mm crimp bead to try it, but I would assume that it does work with a 2x2, because there doesn't seem to be any logical reason why it wouldn't. If you have a magical crimping plier and you have tried it with another type of crimping bead, that is 2x2. I would really love to know if you've had any success with that. So either let me know in the chat or in the comments below if you've tried that. Okay, thank you, Jay Gale. What's your first name? I've just got Jay Gale. It would be really nice to know your first name. Peer character tuning. I don't understand the question. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. It would be really nice to know your first name, Jay Gale. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Next question, how do you stop your jump rings from pulling open? And I used to have this problem all the time when I first started jewellery making. And I used to actually end up putting them on, putting 2 jump rings on because I was so paranoid about them coming undone. And there are 2 little tips I have for you. First one is use the correct size wire gauge of jump ring. So if you, for example, if you use yesterday when I was making my Barbie necklace, I'll give you a little, a peek of this one too. So there's my Barbie necklace. So to get the jump rings to go through these little 4mm beads, I had to use a finer, a 0.6mm jump ring. And I would not normally use that for a clasp. Or to hold 2 pieces of jewellery or components that were going to have any pressure on them. Those acrylic flowers are really light, so I didn't need to worry about that. I would usually use a 1mm jump ring for anything that requires any pressure. So for example, putting a clasp on, you know, for using with my clasp there, getting my camera to focus. Nope, that way. There we go. I would normally use a 1mm jump ring for that because the 0.6mm, if you put any pressure on it, it will fall apart. The other tip that I have for you is to make sure that you do them up properly. So if your jump ring, when you close your jump ring, you can kind of feel that they grate together slightly, the 2 ends. You want them to really be closed really, really well. And even if you've got a little gap, it weakens the jump ring. And especially if you're using tiger tail, you absolutely need to have that jump ring closed really well. And it's taken me a long time to learn how to close my jump rings really, really well. And what I look for is sometimes if you listen really closely to my videos, you will actually hear them click into place. And I'm looking for that, or I'm looking to feel them kind of grate against each other. And that works really well to, you know, that once you hear that, you generally know that your jump ring is closed well. However, having said that, sometimes when your jump ring is closed really well, it might still be sitting up a little bit. So even though your pieces are, you know, like this together, they might be just sitting up just a little bit. And so you just need to wiggle it again and again until you get them nice and closed. So hopefully that helps with that if anyone has that problem. If you still have that problem, let me know and we can address it again and try and figure out together what's going on. So Jane, I have crimp beads and crimp tubes. I usually use beads and they work well, but when would you use a tube? That's a really good question. So crimp tubes are basically they are so crimp beads are round and crimp tubes are more tube-like, more flat. And to be honest, I use them interchangeably. I don't differentiate between the crimp beads that I have are stainless steel versus the crimp tubes that I have, which are plated. So with that in mind, my crimp beads would be stronger and harder to crimp, therefore, than my crimp tubes. I don't honestly know the difference between whether or when you would use either one. Aesthetically, I feel they look the same, and when they're squashed, they feel like they look the same. So that's a good question, Jane. I might do some research on that one and figure that out. But I can't answer you today, but watch this space. I will try and come back to you about that. All right, stretch bracelets. I get lots and lots of questions about stretch bracelets. So the biggest question I get is what type of elastic do I use? And I almost exclusively use a 0.6 millimeter elastic, clear elastic. Now, when I do my tutorials, I do tend to use this type of elastic. And it is, it's flat and it's wider, but actually you'll see in the tutorial that's coming up why I don't use this elastic. I feel that the one that I use normally, the clear one, it's quite rubbery and it's almost plasticky. It almost feels like it's got a plasticky stretch, as opposed to this one, which actually feels more rubbery. And that one I don't use because it's not as strong. What happens when I use that one is that it sometimes sheds, little fibers come off, and then it just becomes a mess. I don't know where I bought that one from. I've had it for years. I had it in the hot pink and I had black, and I think I had some green at some point as well. Really odd colours for me. But I don't know where I got it from, and so I cannot link to that product at all. But to be honest, if you wanted a coloured one, you can get coloured elastic, but I would look for one that has a stronger feel. It's really hard to explain actually. This pink one does not feel as strong, even though it's really, really stretchy. It just doesn't feel as strong as the one, the clear one that I normally use in terms of the spring back. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I use 0.6 millimeter elastic almost exclusively. I have used 1 millimeter elastic in the past, and that's fine to use as well if your bead, the holes in your bead are big enough. And obviously the 1 millimeter is stronger than the 0.6 millimeter. Have I ever had one break? Yes. I have had several stretch bracelets break, and I have had several stretch bracelets stretch, but that is before I started to pre-stretch my elastic. Now that I pre-stretch my elastic, since I started doing that, I have never had one break, and using my knot, the ultimate knot. Oh, the needle that I use to make stretch bracelets is my big eye needle. And I've got one here. Now you'll notice, can you see that? Can't really see it, can you? If you could see it, you'll notice that this needle has actually broken. So it's still together at one end, but it's not together at the other end. And you can absolutely still use it like this. Someone messaged me one day and said, my needles keep breaking, and what do I do? And I just keep using them. Just because they do come apart. They're really very fragile things, the needles. And so if they come apart at the other end, just turn it around and use the other end. It doesn't matter. You can also buy other needles which have nice big eyes, but they don't run the entire length of the needle like the big eye ones. And they're fine as well. In the beginning, I used to use a darning needle, but I found that the darning needle, the eye was slightly bigger than the needle, and you had to get a bead big enough for your needle and the elastic to go through. So that wasn't a great option. How do I stop my stretch bracelets from breaking was the next question, and obviously I already answered that. I pre-stretch my wire. And another question I have been asked recently is, does the elastic and the glue, the E6000, if you're using it, degrade over time? And yes, it does. If you've got a stretch bracelet, I know that my son, right, he's got a whole pile of stretch bracelets that his girlfriend bought him, and they, and generally and reasonably often, I have to fix them for him because he wears them all the time, and he also wears them, you know, in the water and all of that stuff. So yeah, I find that they will degrade over time. And also with the glue. Now, I don't use glue a lot in my jewellery making. I find that I will glue, for example, if I was making a stud earring, I would glue a bead onto the stud post, which there's no option to do that. But for making my stretch bracelets and things like that, I have moved away from using glue. I don't know, maybe it's just in my head, but I feel like there could be a chemical reaction there that could eventually degrade the elastic, but maybe that's just I don't know, maybe that's just me being paranoid. Yeah, so I think if you use it with metal on bead or something like that, it probably doesn't degrade very quickly. I know a lot of crafters use it for all sorts of projects as well, E6000, and they seem to find it fine. I just feel like with a stretch bracelet, it probably isn't the greatest option. Yeah, and it could degrade the elastic. Having said that, I don't think it probably degrades that much using elastic and metal and bead, or in other circumstances. Hope that made sense. I felt like I waffled. How do I store my jewellery? I'll just have a drink and I will answer that question. So I am the worst person to talk to about storing my jewellery. I am so bad at looking after my jewellery. Big confession time. Okay, so I store my jewellery, my earrings, in a plastic tackle box. You know, those plastic boxes with all the compartments. And yeah, Andy's just reminded me about the using the wrong glue. I'll just go back to that stretch bracelet glue question. If you saw my brooch, when brooches go bad video, okay, so I was making a brooch using the same technique that I used for this one, and and I left this in the video. It was a horrible. It was a ridiculous situation. What I did was I put some glue on to glue my back onto my brooch, and that was metal on metal, and I didn't have any E6000, so I used super glue, and I spilt the super glue. It was really runny, and I didn't realize it was so runny, and it went everywhere. And then I had a microfiber cloth on hand, and I wiped the glue up with the microfiber cloth, and it had some sort of chemical reaction, and it burnt my skin, and it stuck to my skin, and it burnt my skin. And so I had, like, my whole of my finger here was covered in blisters from that. So it's important to choose the right glue. If you're making jewellery, you don't want a runny glue. You need to make sure that it's quite viscous so that it doesn't run everywhere. And also, never ever use a microfiber cloth with super glue. I learnt my lesson big time that day. Yeah, so thank you, Andy, for reminding me of that. Okay, so storing my jewellery. Okay, yes, I do tend to store my earrings in a tackle box. More often than not, though, I am terrible, and I whip off my earrings and I put them on the shelf and I forget about them. And then when I'm looking for them, there they are, and they're nice and handy at least. But that also means that I wear the same earrings over and over again because they're just there on the shelf and they're easy to to go and pick up. So yes, earrings I store that way. Now my necklaces, I actually hang my necklaces. I have a 3M hook on the side of in my closet, and I just hang my necklaces on that. And so to get the one that I want, I just take them all off and choose the one and put them back on. Now I've had a lot of questions. Bracelets, I have a bigger tackle box, so they have bigger compartments. So I've had a lot of questions lately about tarnishing, and I've actually found that I actually had a customer who bought a whole pile of these bracelets, and if you can, I'm not sure if you can see that, but this one is quite tarnished. Now hers went black, absolutely. She sent them back to me, and they were absolutely black, and I couldn't figure out why hers had gone black. And so I had to do a lot of research about why they were tarnishing and how to untarnish them. Now, in my opinion, once a piece of jewellery has tarnished, you cannot get it back to its original state. You can use cleaners, and I've used the baking soda and tinfoil method, which, if you don't know what that is, you'll find it all over YouTube and wherever. It's all over the internet. And what I found is, yes, they do come back to being shiny, but they're never quite the same once they've been really badly tarnished. So a couple of things I found that will help to stop your jewellery tarnishing. You should never store your jewellery in PVC. Now, having said that, I just store my jewellery in PVC boxes. Probably not a good plan. So I'm actually going to change that, and I'm working on that. So no PVC. Apparently PVC has a reaction with the metal, with the plating on the silver plating or the gold plating, and I find it particularly with silver, and it tarnishes it. So absolutely do not want to do that. Now, if you do have no choice but to store your jewellery in PVC, you can get anti-tarnish strips, and you can wrap your jewellery in anti-tarnish tissue paper. So that helps. Now, humidity is the enemy when it comes to jewellery and tarnishing. So you need to make sure that the area that you store your jewellery in is really, really dry. If you're, if you wear a piece of jewellery, say, when I was young, I used to wear the same, I never used to wear very much jewellery at all, actually, and I used to wear the same piece and, wear it in the shower, all of that. Now, wearing it on your skin is fine. You can wear it and, get it wet, and your skin, there's a reaction there that stops it from tarnishing while you're wearing it. But if you wash a piece and you put it away and it's not quite dry, what happens is that it will tarnish. So if you do have to wash a piece of jewellery, dry it with your hairdryer before you put it away. I actually find that I put mine in a jar and blow my hairdryer into the jar, and that seems to work really well for drying out all of those little nooks and crannies and getting all of the liquid out. So the other thing that I found with my, so for example with our rolls of chain in the store, what I do is I wrap them in a piece of, I have a plant-based cling wrap, and I tend to wrap my, I wrap my chain rolls in that plant-based wrap, and that seems to work really well to stop things tarnishing. So if you store your jewellery in plastic bags, as long as it's not a PVC bag, you should be fine. I know that I saw a video the other day of another jewellery maker that I watch, and she was covering all her jewellery on she had it all on hooks, but she covered it all in in plastic bags, and that works as well. So hopefully that's answered that question about tarnishing and storing my jewellery. Now I have a couple of funny questions I thought were really weird questions to ask, actually. And I apologise if that person is on the chat and they didn't think it was a funny question. But on the eight 5-minute earrings video, I got asked, are these up-to-date and good sellers? So that's a really interesting question, don't you think? I think that here in New Zealand, it's a really interesting market for crafters. New Zealanders are, I apologise for the Kiwis if there's Kiwis on the call, but New Zealanders are cheap. We come from this long line of DIYers. We have, you know, if you were around in the 70s in New Zealand, we would call ourselves a number 8 wire society. And what that means is that we like to get stuck in and do it ourselves and give it a try. And even though I think that isn't the culture anymore here in New Zealand, we still have this kind of layover from that culture of not wanting to pay for something that someone has made. We will gladly go and buy something that is imported or from a jewelry store or something like that, and but we won't pay when someone else has made it. We have this kind of she'll be right mate attitude, sometimes to our detriment. So I go to craft markets and I see people at craft markets selling earrings for $5 a pair. Now for me that is nowhere near enough, and for me personally, I think the amount of time and the materials you put into making a pair of earrings, okay, so you can make a pair of earrings in 5 minutes, that's fine, but you also have to add on the materials. So if you make it in 5 minutes and you're charging, you know, here in New Zealand, maybe a good rate would be $50 an hour, say. And if you're charging, you know, only $5 for a pair of earrings, I can't do the math. My brain isn't working that well today, but you know, you get the picture. It's not enough. And the problem with people charging $5 for a pair of earrings is that the other crafters who charge more for the earrings, like $15 or $20, you know, people see these $5 earrings and they go, well, why would I pay $20 for your earrings when I can buy those earrings for $5? So I always actually talk to crafters at the craft markets when I see them selling their earrings for $5 and say, you know, your stuff is way too cheap. Not only because it doesn't give you value for your time, but also because it makes the rest of us look bad. Personally, I think, you know, that's what it's like in New Zealand. I don't know what it's like in other parts of the world. I do know that when I lived in Canada, that whole she'll be right and DIY attitude was quite different. So it wasn't, you know, people actually put value on your time. So whether it's just a Kiwi thing, I don't know. So I found I couldn't really answer that question. Good sellers, well, it really depends on the crowd. So if you if you're selling at a craft market and you kind of have to read the room, and some pieces, okay, so here's an example. My daughter's an artist, and her art is she has quite a niche. Her niche is creepy cute. So she was, and she sells t-shirts, lots and lots of t-shirts with her art on them, and I can leave you a link to her website if you like. So Andy, perhaps you can do that. So anyway, her niche is, she has quite a small niche. So she was going to the craft markets every week and trying to sell her t-shirts, and it wasn't working for her. And then she went to Armageddon, which is the New Zealand equivalent of Comic-Con. I'm sure you've all heard of the, you know, fan expo type things where they, with all the sci-fi stuff and that. And so she went to Armageddon and she had an amazing weekend and sold a whole pile of her t-shirts. And so that speaks to, you know, marketing to the right market or to the right audience. So on that kind of note, your jewellery will only sell if you're selling it to the right audience. So if you make jewellery that is quite, I want to say little girlish, but that's not quite the right word, quite young, then it will sell to young people. But if you're at a craft market where there's not young people, you won't sell it. I hope that makes sense. So you've really got to read the room as far as your the saleability. Now, selling on Etsy is probably a really good plan if you want to sell your jewellery, simply because you have access to a huge variety of audience, and everyone I know, you know, you Google something and you can find it on Etsy. So that's probably a really good place to sell your jewellery. But craft markets are great, and I actually really strongly suggest that you do, if you want to sell your jewellery, that you do a couple of craft markets. It'll be really good for you. It'll be good for your confidence, because people will say, wow, that's fantastic. Most people, there are always some that aren't, you know, so generous, but it's a really good experience for you to do a craft market. And so it'll be good for your confidence. It'll also allow you to see what else is out there and what people like. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time. Wow, I didn't think I would actually be able to talk today for almost an hour, so that's good. I really hope that you enjoyed this live stream and that you will join next time. So every first Monday of every month. Hang on, let me try that again. The first Monday of every month, and we will be doing them at 9 a.m. New Zealand time for now, but later on I will mix that up so that, you know, people in other parts of the world can potentially join if it's outside of your time zone. And also remember, if you're part of the Jewellery Junkies group, we get to do our live stream in 2 weeks' time. So Monday, it will be less than 2 weeks, it'll be 10 days now. Monday, the second Monday of every month, that's right. No, third Monday of every month at 9 a.m. So we had an amazing, last time we opened the Zoom up to all of the members, and we had an amazing call, and I forgot to record it, so I'm really sorry about that, being the first one. We had a few, some technical issues for the first, on the first day, and we had to redo it on the next day, but we got there. And so yes, we did have a really great Zoom meeting on that Tuesday 2 weeks ago. Okay, so yes, if you want to join the Jewellery Junkies, if you're not a member of the Jewellery Junkies and you want to attend the Zoom meeting, you do need to be a member of the Jewellery Junkies. Thank you, Jane. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, and anyone else, and thank you for your interaction. It's been really nice to see the chat as well. So have a wonderful day, everyone, and go forth and make lots of jewellery, and evening, if it's probably evening for you, or afternoon. Have a wonderful time, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.